crank up here in a few minutes. Hi, Timothy Miller. How are you? Thanks for stopping by. Going to do some questions and answers. Have a few topics we'll start chatting about here momentarily. Want to see if we get a few more people in here before we get going. If you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and ask them. We'll be happy to get right up on that. We're going to talk. Yesterday was, as Zach Ertz said, he was unaware it was National Tight Ends Day, but turns out it was, as all the tight ends got paid, or at least the top two. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little Todd Gurley. Emil has some interesting numbers on running backs and beyond Todd Gurley, including Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt that are pretty fascinating. There's been a little bit of news there. As people come in, we're just getting up to speed here. So jump in. Thomas E. already chiming in with a question, so we'll jump right on that before we get going in earnest as the crowd builds up. He wants to know, Emil, he picked 7th. And by the way, I'm Bob Harris. He's Emil Kadlec. Hi. We're from Football Diehards. We're your fantasy friends. He picked 7th this year in a PPR league with a 1 point per reception. If the first 6 picks are McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke, Kamara, Dalvin Cook, and Michael Thomas, who would you pick 7th? Well, I know who's coming off right there. In pretty much every draft I'm in right now, it would be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Hi, Fred Fox. But, I mean, you could make arguments for some other guys. Would you, Emil, someone other than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or is that the direction you'd go?
Well, yeah, I would probably consider Helaire. I'm frustrated and confused about that because it's such an unknown. I have Drake ranked at 6 on my cheat sheet PPR. So I would toss myself between him and Helaire is what I would do. And I don't know, maybe by now I'd pick Helaire, I guess. I just like somebody I've already seen playing in the NFL in my first round.
We talked about this a lot, and hi, Peter Ferrari. We'll get to your question in a moment. We talked about this a lot, talked about it on the podcast. Kyle Dvorak and Justin Lanero and myself, if you want to go to the website and listen to that as well, we go into depth on this. But you're drafting everyone in the first round at their ceiling. The issue is you've seen signs of what that ceiling might be for most of these guys. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you're drafting at a ceiling sight unseen. That said, he was running with the first team in practice today. That's a good sign, right? Like, the only thing that was really a concern for him prior to the jet up the ADP ranks into the first round was Damian Williams' presence. There is no longer that. So he opted out for the COVID-19, so he's done for the year. So that's where you're going to have to pay. I would say Derrick Henry is viable. I would say Emil's pick, Kenyon Drake, I have him ranked. I have Henry and Drake ranked as my next ranked running backs. I think, you could talk about Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders. We're going to talk about Nick Chubb's. Austin Eckler's been in the conversation, but it's kind of fallen out of that first round conversation in the last few weeks. But those are the guys I'd be looking at. Now, Emil, Peter is doing his first dynasty. It's a best ball. First, a dynasty best ball? Holy crap.
That doesn't sound right.
The draft starts Monday. What is the one thing to know about dynasty? Well, the number one thing to know about dynasty is you're building for the long term. The number one thing to know about best ball is you're looking for guys who are going to have, look, you want 2 things in best ball. It tends to work similarly to regular drafts early on. I think it's later in drafts where you start taking flyers on those guys that are going to have tremendous weeks, but you don't know when those tremendous weeks are going to be. Hello, Deshaun Jackson. Hello, Robbie Anderson. Hello, just guys that are going to have spike weeks, and their role is kind of not maybe as consistent, but they have that huge upside. So those are more best balls. I have not ever been in a dynasty best ball.
I'm going to think about that. Never heard of it. That's pretty crazy.
You're doing 2 different leagues. I got you. So, yeah, for dynasty, look, there's a fine line between building for now. You can be in win now mode. So if you're doing a dynasty startup, that's kind of the key, is trying to get that mix of young talent, usually more at wide out and quarterback. Running backs are a little more, transient in terms of value. They'll come and go. I mean, look, if your first overall pick in a dynasty startup, you're drafting Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. I mean, you're making the argument for either of those. So, but that's the big. Find the blend of mixing between building for a long-term success and winning now, and it's a tricky mix. Stephen Marquez has a best ball question. Picking 10th. Hardest part is knowing when to sense a position run is starting. Any tips on how to sharpen my spidey sense? So I think, especially in best ball, it's not as big of an issue for me. I mean, look, there's going to be a run of running backs. Those first 12 picks, like 10 to 11 guys in the first round are going to be running backs. So that run is coming. Beyond that, I think unless you're in a super flex or 2 quarterbacks league, I don't think the runs will kill you. Maybe in a tight end premium league it could. What do you think, Emil?
Well, when you see a run coming, several people are going between your last pick and your next pick. If you've got to have some guys. Hopefully you've studied and you've got some guys that are a little later that you think may be able to be undervalued players that you can get. So if you've got some of those guys, you can say, great, there's a run at running back. I'm going to go take one of these wide receivers that is now sliding because people are taking the running backs. If I'm desperate and I have nothing and I really sense a level at running back that's on the run, then you may have to take the next best running back when you get to your next pick. But hopefully you can switch over and then you can have some sleepers and undervalued players that you can take the following round when the run is over.
One thing, Stephen, that the runs are a bigger issue when you get to that 10th, when you're on the ends, 1, 2, and, 10, 11, 12. So if you get in the middle of drafts, it's not as big of a deal. So I guess what I try to look for is when I sense for quarterbacks, it's going to be, the run is going to happen after the 7th or 8th round. Might even last, 9th. But barring that, I think all the runs I've seen this year have been on running back, and they start early and they go through the first 4 rounds. You're finding the running backs coming off the board. So it may be a better idea to just have your short list of running backs ready that you're willing to pounce on. I've been drafting running back heavy early in most every draft that I feel good about. I've experimented with a lot of approaches. They don't all end horribly when I don't go running back heavy early. And by that, I mean at least 3 after the first, or at least 2 after the first 3 rounds. Sometimes that means 2 in the first 2 rounds. Kind of just depends. Usually when I'm in that 10th spot, I'm getting 2 running backs. I'm usually getting maybe a really heavy duty guy and coming back around and getting Eckler. Hopefully that would be ideal for me. So, but that's the thing on runs. And I guess, you mentioned your spidey sense, and I guess it's almost hard to explain for me because I get that same feeling and I generally try to get in front of it. So maybe it's just something that comes with experience.
And being prepared. Have a guy, maybe your Ronald Jones that's going around the 28th to 30th, that if there's this huge run and you've got a couple of these guys that you were going to take a little later to fill your RB2, let's say, and you go, okay, I'm going to go take this 5th ranked wide receiver because he's left there, and hopefully I can get one of these 2 or 3 later picks that I was going to wait on. So have a plan like that before you enter the draft. Think about if there's a run, who am I going to be looking at? You should be targeting all your players. You should have a list of players that you're ready to target, that you're looking for, and those players are, first round all the way through the nth round. They're not just your top round or 2. And then therefore you can look at your list, you can see. As a matter of fact, on our tool, in the stop tool, you can select all your targeted players, and when you go to the cheat sheet and print it out, it's bolded those players, so you can just sit and look at your list and go, oh my gosh, look at that run. Oh, but look at my bolded players here. I can see who I can take later, and then I can make a quick decision on whether I want to switch to a position that's not having a run.
And one other thing, just Stephen, that might be helpful is just to keep a thought in your mind, zigging when everyone is zagging, right? So if everyone goes on a run, maybe you're looking for value in another spot as well. Maybe you start a run in a different direction that takes care of the problem for you. Brittany Coleman wants to know in a 10-man redraft, PPR, is there a better spot to draft from this year? She likes 3 and 4. And if you get 2, would you take Saquon or Zeke? I would take Saquon in a PPR. But look, it's close enough there where if you like Zeke, I wouldn't talk you out of it. I like Saquon. At 10, I haven't done a lot of 10s. I'm in one right now. I'm drafting late. It's working out well. So, I'm near a turnaround. So I think the thing about a 10-man, you're not going to get caught in too many runs. So there's plenty of of available bodies at quarterback. So the quarterback run is going to be an issue. The onesie positions are where I worry about the runs. So and not a tight end at all in a 10 team. So I think you're okay pretty much anywhere. The earlier then the better for me. So I can get Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, whoever.
And if you get stuck in the late, if you get stuck 8, 9, 10 or so, again, a 10 is a lot different. In one angle, you've got 2 more quarterbacks you can take late, how deep your roster is. If it's only a 15-man roster, you still may only take 1 quarterback. If you're only starting 2 running backs and 2 receivers and a tight end, and I was sitting at 8, 9, or 10, or even in the early second round on the loop, I would almost consider taking Mahomes or Jackson, because with a 10-team league, there's going to be extra running backs and wide receivers and maybe some tight ends. And if I can fill those spots and get a Jackson, Lamar Jackson, or a Patrick Mahomes, that may work. Although I am very much late quarterback, that's what my theories are. But really seriously thinking about those 2 guys in the late first round, given your starting lineup structure.
Yeah, that kind of changed the market a little bit, and it is viable. I still like getting those other values at other positions early and hoping I find the next Lamar Jackson, even though he probably doesn't exist. Thank you, Thomas, for the kind words. Thanks. Let's win another championship this year. Stephen Marquez again with a 20-round MFL best ball question. How do you draft defense? How early do you draft defense? How many defenses do you take? I don't draft them until very late. I mean, rarely. I can't remember taking one before round 16, and that's because occasionally I'll take 3, and so maybe round 16, to 17, and maybe don't generally go 3 if I'm waiting later. But it's just kind of a feel thing there as well. But I wait until very late. I know there's going to be guys who are taking some of those primo defenses early. I think you can find disruptive units. It's hard to predict defensive scoring, in these things. So I'm just looking for disruptive playmakers as late as I can.
So it's a 20 round. If it's a 20 round and I assume there's no kicker. It's a little.
No,
I like 22 rounds. So I'd almost say 2 defenses. And Bob, exactly like you're saying, 16th round or so. You don't really want to take them. You want to fill that roster with some quality skill position players.
So I'm in multiple best balls ongoing at any time. I'm using best balls 10, which is the MFL basically version. I guess they do some now. But it's not unusual to see defenses like San Francisco or Baltimore start going in as soon as you get into the double-digit rounds. Maybe not immediately, but like 12, 13, 14. Maybe you see some of these defenses start going. I'm still waiting. You're rarely going to see me get one before 17, and even then, I'm probably waiting a little longer than that. So that's my approach. Other people do it differently. Look, I'm in one right now where I see the Baltimore going off in round 10, and I see San Francisco going 2 rounds later. So some people like that, not me. And thanks, Peter. That's a good deal. Winning a championship. That's what we like to hear about. Kevin O'Brien, we do still have 2 quarterback or 1 quarterback structure. We have a dearth of running back options and such an excess of options. Yeah, so I think, that's one of the reasons you're seeing the rise of like super flex and 2 quarterback leagues. It's kind of an effort. I know I talked to Scott Fish, the Scott Fish Bowl, if any of you are familiar with that online. They kind of try to push some of these things. And I've been in a lot more 2 quarterback or super flex leagues. And I think the effort, the goal is to try and raise the value to make it similar, more closely reflect what goes on the NFL field where quarterbacks are very valuable. So I get that. And I think that's a good way to do it. Another way to do it would be to change your quarterback scoring, right? To make quarterbacks more important. So how do you feel about that, changing the scoring, Emil? Would you rather do that, or are you more interested in having a super flex or a 2 quarterback?
I don't know. I think super flex is a great idea. So you could have 2 starting quarterbacks, or you could have 1 and use the other skill position. And I don't discount any scoring system or any starting lineup system, because you do what you want to do. But as you and I've talked about, there's so many quarterbacks in a 1 starting quarterback leagues it helps a strategy. It helps try and find late quarterbacks where we can take two and may end up getting the next Lamar Jackson this year. But Superflex is fun. It does give you some variety if you don't want to start two quarterbacks all the time, especially for bye weeks. So I'd go that direction instead of changing the rules.
Yes, Todd Ullman has chimed in. Superflex sucks. One quarterback rules. We hear you, Todd.
Superflex sucks. I just watched Rain Man, and I forgot the classic line, Walmart sucks. That reminds me. I didn't ever hear Superflex sucks, so that's a new one on me. Thanks, Todd.
So tell me, Todd, are you for changing the quarterback scoring system to better reflect the game on the field? So, and while you're answering that, I'll get some other questions. Thomas E., last year, most mags and most everybody had Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson as sleeper picks. Jackson was correct. Is Kyler Murray a sleeper this year? And will he be last year's Lamar and prior year Mahomes? I think he can't be because already the value is cooked in, right? So Murray's already ranked as the third, fourth, somewhere in the top five, right? So the reason Lamar Jackson was such a huge league winner last year is because you were still drafting him, even though he's considered a sleeper. I won a ton of money in best ball last year because I drafted Lamar Jackson in a ton of best ball drafts in the 8th round and later, all the way into the double-digit rounds. Kyler Murray, you're not getting that discount. So I'm more in focus of Daniel Jones being the kind of guy who's going to make a huge second-year leap. We saw signs of it last year. He has a great supporting cast, a new coach, and obviously new coaching staff. But just Jason Garrett, maybe not a great head coach, but knows his offense. So I feel pretty good about him. He does have a really tough schedule to start the season. He also has a really tough schedule in Week 16. He faces Baltimore, so there's that. But I think early in the season, the defenses may not be up to speed. Hell, we don't know if the offenses will be up to speed. I always say, September is the new August because nobody plays in the preseason. Well, this year no one was going to play in the preseason anyway. Hell, it might take until November before we really understand what these teams truly are. So I'm still taking a chance on Daniel Jones more than Kyler Murray because I think I'm having to overpay for Kyler Murray. All right, so Timothy Miller wants to know, Kelsey late first or early second in an 8-teamer as opposed to 10 or 12-team leagues. I think that's maybe a little early for me, that late first, but if you want him, I'm guessing that's where you're going to have to get him, right? And probably the same with Kittle, maybe second or third round.
Yeah, unfortunately so. I'm going to go look at the overall for high-stakes leagues right now. And they don't take a tight end till the 21st pick, which is late second round. But high stakes is a little different. Let me go look at the low ADP real quick.
I'm assuming here. It's not a tight end premium league. So it's just if it's regular scoring. Right. I think most of the best balls I've been in, you start seeing the tight ends come off. If they're not both off in the second round, it's early after that turn into the third. So, Emil, what do you see there?
Yeah, about 20 on the other one. So you're still talking, what's that, middle to late second round on the first tight end goes. But I wouldn't be surprised.
An 8-teamer, I think you're going too early if you're going to the second round, right? You're going to find these guys in the third round, or you're going to be getting great value at other positions.
Yeah, but again, when you have an 8-teamer, you're going to have a lot of running backs and receivers left, and you could take a tight end, let's say in the middle of the second round, and get one of the top two, and still have, if you see a real level, if you think there's only 3 quality tight ends or 2 that you want to take one of the top ones, you may be able to take one in the second and still get good value later. But like Bob says, 8 teams, you could probably do it later.
A keeper question from Ryan Bradley, and also Todd. The question was, since you aren't a Superflex fan, are you a fan of changing the scoring system to change the quarterback value, skew it to match the on-field product? Ryan Bradley has a keeper question. Kenyon Drake in the 6th, Josh Jacobs in the 4th, non-PPR. I'm probably going Jacobs in the it's pretty close. I'm probably still going Jacobs in the 4th, but you can make a pretty good case for Drake, with 2 rounds of value, even with a non-PPR. I think a ton of Drake's value comes from his receiving, though, for me. So I'd probably stick with Jacobs, even if he says he's going to catch the ball more. We've seen what he is as a runner. He's a great runner. Even beat up last year, he was a great runner. Good offensive line as well. I'm probably leaning that way slightly in the non-PPR.
Sounds good.
All right, so we have Robert Kirsting. Can you please assist on helping two of the following? 10-team, one-man PPR. He has the 10th pick overall. Saquon first, Henry fourth, or Miles Sanders ninth. So that looks like a second question. So 10-man, 1-point PPR, and he has 10th pick overall. I'm thinking you're going to be ending up in that Kenyon Drake, Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders kind of range there. So, I mean, look, I'd be fine with all those. I'd probably wait until the turn to get my wide receiver and get one of those running backs. But whichever one you like the best, Miles Sanders is growing on everybody.
Well, he is going.
So I guess, or you could go two running backs, maybe get Austin Eckler as that second running back in a 10-team. You could even do that in a 12-team, but I might try that. And then the Saquon in the first, Henry in the fourth, or Miles Sanders ninth. Are these the picks? So if Henry is the first,
evidently he's saying he has those option on the position 1, 4, 9. That's what I take that.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure I understand that. So, maybe clarify that a little bit, Robert, because I think I totally misread your question.
Well, if he's got the first option of a first pick.
Okay. Giving two of those three players in a keeper league.
Oh.
So do you have Miles Sanders in the 9th round? If that's the case, I'm probably going to keep Saquon no matter what, and I'd keep Miles Sanders in the 9th. I wouldn't talk you out of keeping Henry and Sanders if that's the case too, and keep your first round pick. All right, yeah. So
one of them's got to be Miles with the 9th. You got to keep Miles and then pick one of the other two.
If Saquon goes back in the pool, it might depend on how early your pick is. Maybe you just jump back in and get him. So if you pick early enough, so that's worth considering. Consider where you're drafting, and kind of figure that out as well. So. All right, Brittany, another question from. Just curious, when you go into a live draft offline, do you come with your tier sheets, etc.? Do you use software when I go to live drafts, I generally just have my laptop or my iPad with my rankings, my own rankings, whether it's in an Excel file if I have a laptop, or I use the online tools on the site. I'll just access the site because they're my rankings and I've adjusted them. And we have technology in the back end where we set our rankings, so I usually work off those. So I'm working off my rankings basically, and kind of playing it as I can. I would recommend having some form of online tool so you can maybe compare ADPs and things like that. So have your footballdiehards.com up and running so you can have your ADP numbers, your comp tool. If you want to use your draft dominator, that helps too. So,
and we also have one of our cheat sheets has the ADP in it. I think it's an overall. So you could print your simple cheat sheet and the ADP one, or use both of them to check the ADP real quickly. And I like to print out mine. I also like to have a co-manager to bounce things off of and remember, what's going on. And I also have my target list, or my cheat sheet has the bold from our tool, so you see your bolded players. But I like having a piece of paper in front of me.
I see William talking about prices on players, but I don't see his first question, or I don't see a press question about that $12 pick. So, and it is not unprecedented to change the default. Look, I like Superflex. I like, a little more than 2 quarterback. I'm fine with either. But try a variety of leagues. I probably play in too many. I'll probably be in 20 plus redraft leagues and dynasty leagues this year. I'll probably be in 50 best balls by the time it's all said and done, and I'll play DFS every week. So I don't know. There's no shortage of fun for me, and that's why you want to get on footballdiehards.com and use the My Fantasy GM tool, by the way, so you can keep track of your free agents when you're in those 20 plus leagues. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
All right.
Huge.
So okay. Look up 2 questions. I don't actually see it. Well, Kevin, I don't actually see it up 2 questions. So maybe you could retype the question in or cut and paste it for me, William. I just don't. I don't see it there. I see just the one with $12. So sorry for that.
Maybe it's way up. Oh, no, I don't see
I've scrolled all the way to the top. Final question. Are you still able to make enough money from the magazines? For this such a tough industry. Wait, people make money off this?
Oh, I thought we did this for free. Gosh. Yep, this is our 31st season doing magazines, believe it or not. We're still pounding away.
Yes. Brittany, I like Cook better. I mean, you could, it's a 50-50 kind of proposition. I have them ranked 4 and 5. If I was in 10 drafts, I'd take 6 Cooks and 4 Camaras.
Excellent answer.
Does a quarterback get more value in an 18-team league? Should I draft a second quarterback early for the bye week? Yes and yes, or earlier. I mean, it's more important in an 18-team league because you change the economics of the position. The inventory goes down. So, that drives up the value to a degree. So, yes, I would be much more interested in quarterbacks, and I'd be drafting them early, and I'd want to make damn sure I got a second one. And I might want to get a third one later, depending on the depth of draft, maybe the handcuff to my main starter, just in case so I don't get caught short. And so other people in my league.
Yeah, and the other thing you got to recognize, too, you need to go through some mocks and stuff because 18 managers, that means the running backs, the tight ends, and the receivers are going to be going off the board. So it's not so easy that second quarterback may not be, it may be the 24th overall quarterback, and you still have to manage the whole roster. So that's going to be tough. 18 teams, a whole different perspective.
Yeah, it definitely is. So how do you see Denver's running game shaking out? Is Gordon going to be a bell cow, and will the passing game, not his catches, be enough to allow him success? I see it like right now. It seems pretty much like a timeshare, right? And so we're not going to have a good idea. I know Jeff Legwald from ESPN.com wrote just I think 2 days ago that it's going to be kind of a guessing game from week to week. Lindsey's not going away, but Gordon has been pretty effective. I think Gordon is a good play because he's great near the goal line, has a nose for the end zone, and look, they're paying him pretty good money. But Lindsey's coming off straight 1,000-yard seasons. I don't think they give up on Lindsey directly. I don't see Gordon being a bell cow either, so I think it's going to be a split. I know, I don't want to go, it's not going to be 50-50. I think it's going to be more Gordon. Even if it was 70-30, I don't think that makes, I think that takes Gordon out of the true bell cow discussion. But, it's not bad, right? And so, yeah. I think one thing to remember in this AFC West division, they're all gearing up to get shooting matches because Kansas City is a shooting match every week. And if you looked at what Denver did adding skill players, you look what the Raiders did adding skill players, you look what the Chargers did, oh, wait. They're still playing catch-up. But maybe they will eventually. But I think that's kind of the key to the AFC West now is scoring a lot of points. So Lindsey will still be involved, I think, mostly as a receiver. And I think I agree with you, Todd. Everything goes way too quick in an 18-team. In a 12-team dynasty, one quarterback PPR, would I trade Antonio Gibson and Jonnu Smith for Devontae Parker? Wow. My take so Antonio Gibson is drawing a lot of attention and getting a lot of excitement. I would probably be looking to sell him right now. I don't know what the hell he's going to be. Maybe he's going to be fantastic. He's a big body. He's a good receiver. There are openings at the running back position now, but they still got a ton of bodies. So, I guess it depends on your faith in Devontae Parker. Maybe it seems like a little much to pay in a dynasty. I'm just not as sold on Gibson. I know other people that are. My co-host on SiriusXM, Michael Fabiano, I saw him go Gibson as early as round 6 in a dynasty, which I thought was pretty crazy. Or pretty damn early anyway. But if you really believe in Gibson, I guess that's the question. Do you believe in Gibson or not? And I'm not there yet. And Jonnu Smith, I think, is a high player. I think Devontae Parker last year was a wide receiver 1 for half the season, and he's a fairly young guy. So it's a pretty tough call there.
Now, who else do you have at tight end? So do you have a guy at tight end that you can have for 2 or 3 years, and maybe you can get the guy to throw in a second or third round dynasty pick for 2021 to kind of hedge your bet a little bit?
Yeah, he's not looking for any of these guys to start, he says. So, and maybe the better question, Buck, is, how close are you to making a push for the title this year? If you're making a push this year, maybe Parker is the piece that could make a difference for you this year. And maybe if not, and you're playing for the long term, then maybe Antonio Gibson is the guy you might want to have. Pretty close call, though. Kevin O'Brien, could Hines be this year's Austin Eckler? He could be. So it's funny because the coaching staff in Indianapolis comes from San Diego, or the Chargers anyway. And they were talking about it earlier this year, how Nyheim Hines could turn into what they call a role starter. And their example of that was a guy they coached in San Diego, Danny Woodhead. who is the prime example of that receiving back. I don't know that my expectation is he becomes the Austin Eckler or plays that role or even becomes a Danny Woodhead. But I do think where he's going in drafts has been pretty fair, and I find myself getting more of them than I expected in best ball. I'm going to check his ADP real quick.
And the other thing I have, my question to add to that question is, when Eckler did well, he did well catching, but he also did well running. And they had whatever his name is, but he was getting hurt a little bit. Well, now you go to Indianapolis, you got Mack, who did well, and then the new Jonathan Taylor. So are you going to expect Hines to not only catch a lot of balls, but he's going to have to run a lot? And I don't think that's the part of Eckler that he's going to be able to have. He's not going to get those carries, I don't think, this year.
Also, Eckler was amazing last year, unnaturally good. I'm a little worried about him duplicating that as it is, although I think the role is there. The quarterback is not. But either way, Hines is going in the 13th round right now. So you're not paying a premium to find out if he could be that guy. I think it's a fair price for him.
Yeah, excellent point.
And it's worth paying. So we're going to talk a little bit. We've talked a little bit at Emil about the tight ends. And, Travis Kelce got paid a 4-year, $57 million extension. Kittle got paid 5-year, $75 million extension. And so I guess the question for you is that the tier? Are you the guy drafting those tight ends early? Are you getting them in the second or, early third round if you have to?
Well, it's a struggle. It's such a struggle. I sometimes do, and like we talked before about percentages, if you have 10 leagues, maybe a couple you're taking one of those top 2 or 3 guys in the second or third, and then managing the other positions. And then some of them I'm looking at there's a lot of guys there from 4 to 10, even Gronk. And of course I'm kind of a Higbee person that I can take in the bottom of the 6th. So I'm mixing those in, and I'm not just spending all of my leagues doing one thing. It's because it's when you're taking a guy in the second or third round as a tight end, you're giving up somebody that you're going to have to make up later in an undervalued player. That if you got a sleeper running back or wide receiver that you think it's great in the 7th round, then I can take one of those tight ends in the second, and if I'm right, I succeed.
Yeah, lots of upside guys at the position. It seems like every year we think that there are, and there aren't as many, and it ends up not as many as we thought, but they are there. So I'm okay. So if I'm missing out on those first, and I put Mark Andrews in that tier with the top 2 basically, but I get a little bit of a discount on them. So if I get one of those 3, I'm fine with it. If I don't, I'm waiting until way late, and I'm drafting that next round after that mid-range guy, which kind of goes through Hunter Henry. You start getting into the T.J. Hawkinson, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki range. I'm probably paying there. Timothy Miller wants to know, will Cincinnati's offensive line be better this year? Yes. Will it be good enough for Joe Mixon to finish better than last year? Yes. Also, yes, the workload. We were going to talk about this coming in. If you look at Mixon's workload last year, first half of the season, the usage was horrible. They went into the Week 9 bye. They came out of the Week 9 bye, and Mixon had double-digit carries every week after that. Not only that, they made adjustments to better suit his talents. He was remarkable down the stretch. And the best thing about that was it didn't matter if they were getting their tails whipped. The game script went out the window. He was the only game in town. They handed him the ball no matter what, even when they were losing. This year, you have a little hope in that the offensive line could be a little better, and that just the offense. We've got Joe Burrow. We've got A.J. Green, who's reportedly looking good. Look, if they can get in some semi-positive or better game scripts, think of what they might do with Mixon. Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator, talked about it this very week. And go to Football Diehards and read the story about they need to get him more touches, that he gets better with more touches. So, yes, I think Joe Mixon is one of those guys who I like the price on, and I think there's a little bit of upside too. And especially if they use him more as a receiver. He only caught 35 balls last year. Expect more of that. Todd Ullman, who already knows who the worst teams in the NFL are, asks, Miami, Jets, Cincinnati all seem like they'll be better. Who are the juicy teams to play a defense against? I still think Miami will be one of those teams that is horrible, but I like the direction they're going. I just think it's going to take a long time to get there. Jets offense needs to show a lot of improvement. I know they upgraded the offensive line. I'd like to see it manifest on the field. I do think Cincinnati's going to get better. They invested some money in defense. The thing about the Jets is their defense lost 2 key pieces, right? Jamal Adams and C.J. Mosley. And when I'm looking for teams to pick on, I'm more looking for the juicy offenses more than the juicy defenses. I'm looking for my defenses that I draft to have enough playmaking, disruptive playmakers to score me some points regardless of the opposition. And I know that's not easy every week, but I'm more looking at the lousy defenses my offensive players are going against. And I think Miami and the Jets for sure are still going to be on that list.
Another thing to remember, and this is why defenses go late, is things change, including the worst teams in the league. When you get in past the first 3 games or in the middle of the season, and when you start to approach fantasy playoffs, there's some teams that are decimated offensively, and you can stream defenses and pick up average defenses a week or 2 ahead of time and have monster defensive games to help you make the playoffs and in the playoffs.
All right, so Drum Dog. I'm a drummer too, Drum Dog. Which tight end in Tampa Bay is going to be the one to draft? It's Gronk, because the other ones are going to be streaming options for me. And I know Gronk is going in that range where I don't generally draft tight ends, that 5 to 10 range. But look, I think 50 to 60 catches and 500-600 yards and 5-6 touchdowns wouldn't be crazy for him. Don't know what to make of the other guys right now. Emil?
Well, Gronk's still going fairly late. He's like 8th, 9th, 10th tight end taken. So, again, you can wait a while and take him. And there's still some other guys that Bob talked about a little earlier that maybe week 1, week 2, week 3, once you see maybe Gronk's not getting that many targets, you may be able to pivot and pick up a free agent.
And stacking is still a good strategy in a COVID-19 year. I think in best ball it still is to a degree, and it will be in DFS, but it's just riskier. So, it's still a good strategy, but it's a riskier strategy. Maybe that makes it an even better strategy because fewer people are doing it, and you can maximize the leverage the value there. But I'll still be doing plenty of it, and I still am in best ball right now. But it is risky, granted that. Keeping Kyler Murray or Daniel Jones, William Herrick wants to know. I think over the long haul, if all values are equal, I'm keeping Kyler Murray. If the values are where they currently stand right now and I'm getting an 11th round price or whatever on Daniel Jones and a 5th or 6th round price on Murray, the conversation becomes more difficult.
Yeah, what are you giving up? Are you giving up a draft pick? Is this kind of a dynasty thing, or are you just cutting them?
Yeah, it looks like he had a dynasty quite before.
Yeah, I think maybe if you have to give up a 3rd round draft pick to take Murray or 1st or something versus Jones, you're giving up a 10th, then maybe that makes your decision for you.
Yeah, I'm like a total Dan. I'm totally buying. He can keep one. I'm totally buying it. Is there a value, William, associated with him? Let me know that, and we'll figure this out here. Jeff Mans, who I love dearly, says Baker Mayfield may be a great value this year. After all, they are stacked at O-line, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. He may well be onto something. He often is. Even sometimes the correct answer. And in this case, look, what's the first thing I do after a season ends? I make a list of all the players who truly disappointed owners, right? Guys who invested in them. And those are guys I'm going to get better deals on this year. And Mayfield is one of those guys. It was a horribly disappointed season, and maybe some of it was him, but certainly a lot of it was a dysfunctional coaching staff. They were, it was a horrible situation for everyone involved. So expecting a rebound season seems like not unreasonable.
Well, also, you get him so late. And, yeah, he does have, we sit here and we talk about Hunt and Chubb doesn't catch the ball up, but obviously you've got some great receivers in Landry and Odell Beckham. You got a new tight end. You got everything you want for a quarterback to exceed, but he still has to have the experience and the talent and hopefully now the coaching to be able to do it. And if you look at his last 7-8 games, he started to play pretty well last year. He was getting above 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the last 8 games. Yeah, the guy could do it. He could really be the guy. I don't like what I saw last year. I didn't see a mature man. But 1 year can make a difference. Just what happened to Lamar Jackson, and you can get him so late. Obviously, I would double him up with somebody. And it's an excellent opportunity to take a chance on Baker.
William, no values associated, all things being equal. I keep Kyler Murray, higher volume offense, good range of skill players around him, maybe not quite as high at running back, but certainly a wide receiver better. So that'd be the direction I'd go. I'd go Murray if all things were equal. Todd, I'm not sure what that question is. So, Emil, I wanted to you'd run some numbers on Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and how some of the values played out last season and where they're going at right now. I was wondering if you would share that with us.
Yeah, just a simple look. This big issue about the two. Just instead of looking at the emotion, look at the logic. And Nick Chubb last year from week 10 through 16, if you take his PPR data and convert it into a 16-week season, he would have scored 217 points, which would be this 15th ranked fantasy running back last year, which is kind of lower than I was expecting. And Hunt, if you take his data from the last, basically week 10 when he came back through week 16 and put it into 16 weeks, he just scored 208 fantasy points, just a little lower than Chubb, which is the 17th running back. So Hunt would have been a running back too. So, interesting data there. I was a little surprised.
Right. If you look at the current ADPs, Nick Chubb is going 203, the 12th running back off the board, while Hunt is going in round 5. 503 is the 27th running back off the board, going off as a running back 3. So don't be afraid to jump up, in other words, and grab a guy like Hunt while everyone else is scared. Do we have a strategy for when to play a high-risk guy like Will Fuller on any given Sunday? Kevin O'Brien, I play him every damn Sunday. I am injury agnostic, and it'll ruin you or it'll win. I guess, maybe it depends on your approach and the rest of your roster structure, right? So, maybe if you have some really good high-end guys, and sometimes you should consider this when you're drafting, not just your roster, but within each position group, building in some risk and building in some high floor guys so that you can play the risky guys because you have some other high floor players around them. So when you're going to draft a Will Fuller, make sure you have a guy that you think maybe a Robert Woods or a Cooper Kupp, ahead of him, or maybe a couple guys like that are going to get those high-end targets. Look, if Will Fuller's on the field, he's going to be a wide receiver 1 or likely put up wide receiver 1 numbers or something close to it. And if you can stand the risk, and it's miserable, man, I get it. So my feeling is nobody cares who didn't win the league, right? So if I go down in a blaze of glory paying these high-end guys who maybe have a lot of risk associated, I'm going to live with that. If I go down, playing a bunch of boring, mundane guys and I, come in third place and, maybe I would have liked a more exciting season. So, but some of this is your individual style of play, and that's certainly mine as being more of a risk taker with some of these talented players. What I'm looking for, and I know Emil is too, you're looking for guys you're drafting at a value that they can win your league, right? So when you get a J.K. Dobbins, in the 7th round, who may come on down the stretch, or if you believe he'll come on down the stretch, or if you're getting a Joshua Kelly, a guy that I believe is going to move into that Melvin Gordon role maybe earlier this summer. Look, it might not happen, right? I have explained myself a series of events that I can believe that's going to happen. I have created a narrative. And look, I'm going to be watching over the next 2 weeks to see whether my narrative has a chance of coming true. But until it does, if I'm getting a guy in the 15th round who I think might be a Melvin Gordon type producer, that's a league winner, right? And I think Will Fuller, I'm going to check the latest ADP, but last time I checked, he was still in that range where if he stayed up in the locked and upright position, he is going to be one of those guys who changes the way a league outcome.
Really, your biggest problem with Fuller is he healthy that week? If you're going into Sunday and he's questionable and now he's going to play, but he's limped, those are your real hard problems. Yeah, he is not a possession receiver. When healthy, he can have some small games and he can have some huge games. But if you've drafted him and you, like you said, if you don't have a plethora of receivers, you should be starting him each week.
Right, and he's going off in the 7th round. You look at who's going off around him, and maybe this helps you build your roster, right? There's Michael Gallup and Jarvis Landry are going in that same range. Landry both of those guys are going incredibly low to me. So is Will Fuller. And I think, if you were building a higher risk at the above them, like say you had a Devontae Parker or a Marquise Brown, a player I love but clearly unproven, maybe then you go later and get one of those higher floor guys like Jarvis Landry or Michael Gallup. If you've gone a little bit more higher floor earlier, then maybe you take that chance on Will Fuller there. So that's kind of what I mean by that. So one thing, in his past 16 games with at least 7 targets, Will Fuller has 87 catches, 1,192 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That would have been wide receiver 7 last season, right? So when he's on the field, he's got a locked-in connection with Deshaun Watson. So I think I beat my point into the ground here, but that's kind of the approach I'm taking. So I'm not. One thing you're going to find with us, if you've been around us for a while, Emil and I both, we're telling you what we do, and we're trying to explain why we do it. And we'll go down with the ship on our thing. We'll plant that flag and go down with it. You don't have to. You get to pull your own decisions and make your own calls. But I hope by explaining why we do things, that helps you figure out what you want to do. And that's kind of why I explained to Will Fuller and the roster construction. So you could basically, look, I'm a low-risk player. I want to play the safer plays. Well, there's guys in his same value range that are going to give you safer plays. But the high end, I like playing that way.
Those are excellent points. You're looking for a guy who could be basically you're saying Fuller, if he has a full season, he may be a wide receiver 1 that you can get in the 7th round.
Wide receiver 3, and that's the point. You're getting a guy who will outproduce his value, and that's how you win fantasy football, is getting guys that either return their value, but mostly by guys who outperform their value.
Now another question is, Hopkins definitely, demanded double coverage, which gave Fuller some more opportunities. Is Cooks going to do that for him in 2020?
Fair question. And the thing that I like about it is, and we probably spent way more time on Will Fuller than we should, but the connection. I mean, Deshaun Watson is absolutely fearless throwing to him and has a lot of confidence in him, but he's got to be on the ground. And yes, Timothy Miller, for every Arian Foster, there's 20 Justice Hills. Absolutely true. And there's also somewhere out there a C.J. Anderson, a Nick Goings, a Reuben Droons, a Terrell Davis, a Dominic Davis. I mean, look, they come out of nowhere. Every year someone wins somebody a league that nobody drafted almost, right? So Alex Collins in Baltimore, or Justin Forsett, right? So, these guys happen. And that's it's hard to predict some of those like breakout running backs because some of them don't happen until the circumstances dictate in the season. And that's why you got to stay on top of things as the season progresses. But as you go into the season, we're kind of drafting anticipated roles. And I'm kind of drafting like nobody's hurt, even though I know probably they're going to get hurt. Talking to you, Tyler Eifert. Yes, Todd Ullman, Joshua Kelly is my guy. I will burn in hell with him, or I will ride to great glory. And look, and that's the thing, though, about a guy like Kelly, right? You're not paying for him. He's a free play. I like the same thing about it, like a Steven Sims in Washington. Anyone I can get in the last 3 or 4 rounds that I think might be a starting player, that's a huge return on value.
As a matter of fact, last night, the auction draft we were doing, I tried to get Kelly in the last pick, and it wouldn't let me and whatnot. It turns out I had taken the tight end, the place kicker, but then when they reverted, I lost him and I didn't. So it forced me to take a kicker in the last pick. That's why I couldn't take Kelly. Ironically, I checked this morning, and Joshua Kelly is available, and it's a 18 deep, 12-team league. So again, Bob, ditto. You can get him so late that he's a guy who, that's the kind of guys you want. You want the guys to get late who may end up really playing well as rookie season.
Right. Some of those, might be guys that we consider handcuffs. You look at, Alexander Madison. That's why guys draft him standalone, right? That's why you don't, if you're a Cook owner, I can speak from great experience. You better draft him damn early. He comes with a hell of a premium because somebody believes he might be a guy that if Cook gets hurt, wins them a league, and it's a fair price if you're taking that gamble. So those are the kind of decisions. And there's a ton of guys really late in drafts that I think could be, that I think have that potential, whether it's guys behind Kenyon Drake, whether it's, if you don't want to go super early on, or not super early, but, double-digit rounds, early double-digit rounds on Chase Edmonds, wait till the last round and go, Benjamin. And just, look, some of these are guys you can pick up on the waiver wire, and that's something you have to decide based on how deep your rosters are. But in best ball, I think flyers on guys like that are a great call. Look, Jerick McKinnon is a guy right now still going in after round 15. The 49ers spent a hell of a lot of money on him. He's been hurt the last 2 years. This year, everybody who's been on the practice field says he looks like exactly what they want. Do I believe Raheem Mostert is going to be a true fantasy running back one? I do not. Do I believe Tevin Coleman is? Probably not. Do I believe Jerick McKinnon is? No. I think if I'm going to get those three options, I want the cheapest one. And right now, that's easily Jerick McKinnon. So kind of treat a lot of receiving cores like that too. You look at the range of guys, you could make a pretty good argument, especially with guys I like going in the same range, where there's A.J. Green, Marquise Brown, and Devontae Parker all going early in the 6th round in best balls right now. I like all of them. So, but I can't get all of them, right? So maybe since I like Preston Williams and he's a lot cheaper, I throw Devontae Parker out of that equation, and then I only have to decide between A.J. Green and Marquise Brown. Well, if I've already invested in Mark Andrews a round or two earlier, the decision is even easier. I'm going to go with A.J. Green. So those are the kind of, these are the calculus you perform as you're creating a roster, building it down the road. But one of those options and one of the keys to doing that successfully is understanding what the prices are of the cheaper components in a receiving core or a running back core. So something to keep in mind when you're drafting. Anything to add to that, Emil?
Oh, it's excellent points. Those are great points on how to draft, the draft strategies. And as you pointed out, you just start drafting. If you're not preparing, you're not planning your roster, how many people you have at each skill position, and you're running down, you get up 2/3 way through the draft, and all of a sudden you go, oh gosh, I've already got 7 receivers. My sleeper receiver, I can't fit on my roster. And so you really need to manage those ideas and do the calculus, the fantasy draft calculus, and be watching what's going on and have the plan before you start. It's good points. Excellent.
I don't actually know calculus. I struggle with geometry. But beyond that,
what's the derivative of e to the power of x?
He knows calculus. I'm not messing with him.
It's e to the x anyway.
Everyone knows that. We're going to go another 5 or so minutes here. If you have any more questions, jump in, and we'll get to those. We're going to be doing this 5 days a week or something like this. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are going to be basically this time of day, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and we'll be answering questions like this. We've kind of been doing mock drafts. Last night we did a great auction. You can watch the replays of these on our YouTube channel or at the Football Diehards website. And we'll be doing drafts mostly on the Tuesday and Thursday editions, 8 p.m. Eastern. But we're going to try and adjust them so I can answer your questions, maybe email. And we'll be inviting you guys to jump into the mock drafts, and I will critique and tear you apart. No, I will critique and explain and discuss, and I'll be here to answer questions like I'm doing now. So a couple more questions coming in as we wrap this one up. How early should we look for a waiver wire darling during the season? As soon as they appear, right? Like we're looking for injuries, looking for changing developments, and don't hesitate. Look, if you have a fab budget or whatever, maybe that puts a little limiting factor on you, but don't be afraid to go after guys who look like they have a great opportunity early on and think you're going to save all your fab money for the end of the season. You don't know how it's going to work out.
When that question came up, I thought of Todd Ullman, and he immediately responded. First week, Kevin, you don't necessarily do free agency in week 1, but you look at it very carefully, especially with the C19 era. Man, things may be bizarre in week 1, and you've got to spend some serious time putting in your fab budget in and thinking about what you're doing. Another example I mentioned yesterday, a player in the Fantasy Football World Championships about 4 years ago, he won $150,000. He had a 20-team rosters. He had 4 or 5, I can't remember, players left on his original roster. This is a guy who beat 400 other people. So free agency is why he won that league.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it. And and by the way, Timothy, thanks for the kind comments. You too, Stephen. Appreciate it. And by the way, Mike Dempsey, my SiriusXM radio co-host, will spend all his fab money week 1 if he has to. He doesn't care. He'll figure it out and do first come, first serve after that. If you find an opportunity, he goes after it. Drum Dog 100 wants to know if New England's defense is going to be as good as last year Probably not. They were pretty historic last year, right? They've had a bunch of opt-outs, including Chung and Hightower, and I think starting tackle. So, yeah, I think it's not going to be as good, but thinking they're not going to be as good overlooks the coaching staff that I have sources tell me is very good.
And by the way, when you're on YouTube there, go ahead and follow us or like us or whatever it is. Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe.
Excuse me, subscribe.
Subscribe. That's what the kids say, Emil.
Subscribe.
Yes, subscribe, like, do all those things. Share as much as you want. We appreciate that. In the meantime, go to footballdiehards.com. You'll find all our content there. The August update draft guide is running. Configurable cheat sheets, updated rankings, plenty of news, notes, and information. If you're not a customer, go to footballdiehards.com/free trial. I'll put that in the comments as well. And you can look around for a week. And if you already know you love us and you want to buy us and you're thinking, why the hell haven't I already? Use the promo code Diehards to get a 15% discount on the already low price. And also listen to us on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. You'll hear me and Mike Dempsey Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights, and Monday nights. You'll also hear Mike Dempsey and me on Football Diehards on SiriusXM NFL Radio. Saturdays from, I think I know the times of that one, 5 to 8 Eastern. You'll also hear me on Fantasy Dirt with Michael Fabiano on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. So no shortage of me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, and they're trying to figure out how to get rid of me, and they just can't yet. So they'll continue to make that effort. In the meantime, we will be back Monday. That'll be a Monday, 3 p.m. Ask Me Anything. We'll go through the same kind of stuff and have a great time there. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your attention. Hit the subscribe button. Share the videos. Go to the website. Listen to the radio. I'm Bob Harris. He's Emil Kadlec.